Hello, and welcome to this Foster Care Institute online training webinar, Accountability Without Accusation. I'm your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, founder and director of the Foster Care Institute. I have been a foster parent myself to over 60 plus children who have come through my home, a best-selling author of several foster care books, a consultant to agencies and child welfare programs across the world, and I have been blessed to have over 60 children come through my home and be a part of my family, and I've adopted 3 children from the system as well. Our goal during this Foster Care Institute training webinar is to help you better understand how to help children become accountable. We're going to increase your awareness of the differences between accountability and accusations. And you're going to help gain understanding of how to develop some strategies and implement some strategies that are designed to best help those children in crisis to become accountable for their actions, accountable for their choices, and accountable for their decisions. Quote, children that aren't taught accountability for their actions grow up to become adults that think nothing they do is wrong, end quote. And this comes to us from Moms Living Thriftly. And there's some truth to this quote. So many children today don't have those lessons of accountability taught to them, particularly children who are coming from families where there's no structure, where there's no consistency, where there's no stability. Children who have lived a life of trauma. Children placed into the foster care system. Now, before we look at accountability and the differences between that and accusations, it's important for us to have a reminder, if you will, a review of why children in the foster care system suffer from anxiety. So let's review. When a child is placed into the foster care system for whatever reason it might be, it is a time of tremendous anxiety. As we've noted here at the Foster Care Institute before several times in many of our webinars, and of course in several of our books as well, you can put aside all of the trauma, all of the neglect, all of the abuse. When a child is placed into a foster care home, perhaps your home, does not matter how much stability, structure, consistency, safety, and unconditional love you provide. At the end of the day, if you will, that child is placed into a home with strangers. As a result, there's going to be a time of anxiety. Confusion as well. Questions like, why am I here? Is it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Do my parents no longer love me? Will I ever see my mom and dad again? Questions like, who are these new people I'm living with? What are their rules like? Will their own children hurt me? Will these people be mean to me? Again, does anybody love me? And they have those concerns and their fears. For some children, they might have feelings of anger. Perhaps they are angry at their birth parents, for they feel they were deserted by them. Perhaps they have anger towards a caseworker or towards the child welfare agency, maybe anger towards law enforcement, perhaps anger towards you as a foster parent. For some children, they may experience feelings of guilt because they may feel that they did something wrong. Perhaps it is their fault that they were removed from their home and placed into a foster care environment. Perhaps they have guilt believing that it's their fault that their parents might be incarcerated or hospitalized. They might feel it's their fault that they were removed from their siblings and their relatives and family members. And for so many children in the foster care system, it's a time of self-doubt as well. Indeed, when a child is removed from their home and placed into a foster care environment, it is a time of trauma. It's a traumatic experience, emotional upheaval. As they go to a new home, there's new rules, and there are new parental figures in their life. To be sure, Many children in the foster care system experience something known as separation anxiety. Anxiety of being separated from perhaps their siblings, from their mother and their father and their parents, from other members of their family. And of course, going to a new school is also a time of anxiety as well, as they're surrounded by strangers, removed from their friends at school, and their focus is not on school. Their focus is not on the homework assignment given them. Their focus is not on the book that they need to read. Their focus is not on the science project or the math problems. Their focus is survival. Their focus is being with their family once again. And this causes more anxiety. Now, when a child is removed without any sort of notification, perhaps the child welfare agency, perhaps a caseworker, perhaps a social worker, perhaps a law enforcement arrive at their home unexpected, well, this can be even more traumatic because the removal was without any sort of notification. There was no clues, if you will, that they would be removed from their home, removed from their parents, and the child's often unprepared, as we've seen countless times. Their belongings are quickly gathered up in garbage bags. There are quick goodbyes between their mothers and their fathers and their family members and them. And in no short time frame, they are now in a home with strangers. People they did not ask to be placed with. People they do not know. And again, there is that sense of tremendous anxiety. For children placed in foster care, they have no control. They do not have control of being removed from their mother, being removed from their father, being removed from their bedroom, being taken from their house, their home, their stuffed animals, their toys, their pets. Did not ask to be placed into a home with strangers, did not ask to be placed into the foster care system, did not ask to be placed into a new school, did not ask to be placed with a new caseworker. They had no control, no sense of control in their life. And this causes even more anxiety. As a child moves from one place to the next, and is done even more so, known as multiple displacement, there are going to be emotional, psychological, and social effects. Indeed, every time a child is removed from one place and moved to the next, their mental health is threatened. And as we've seen in the book Helping Foster Children in School, their academic performances are often lower than traditional students. Indeed, children in foster care are, on average, 18 months behind academically from the traditional student, and they suffer with reading and math skills. And 55% of these youth, when they age out of the foster care system, will quit school. It is critical, it is pertinent, it is necessary and essential for a child to form at least one positive, one loving, one healthy relationship with a parental figure or caretaker in their life. And this is important in order for that child to develop both socially and emotionally. For you see, the removal of the home for the child and placed into another home, removal from their family and placed into another family, well, this makes forming relationships very difficult and traumatic. Now, for much more on this topic, please watch the webinar Anxieties and Disorders here at the Foster Care Institute. It is important to note this. Children in foster care are doing the very best they can. They are trying to survive in a system they do not understand, they do not agree with, a system that they do not approve of, a system they do not want to be in. No child wants to be in foster care. Again, the child in your home is doing the best he can. Now let's look at accountability. I like this quote here. Quote, teaching accountability is an evolving process, end quote, which means that when we try to teach children accountability, it's something that is going to evolve over time. A child does not become accountable on day one. It takes time, it takes practice for that to evolve. So many children in foster care are struggling with emotions and feelings that overwhelm them, feelings and emotions that they do not understand or know how to process. When working with these children, working with children who might be struggling in a number of ways, one approach you can use is known as compassionate curiosity. Compassionate curiosity. The curiosity is not to find the truth behind a problem. The curiosity is not to teach a lesson. The curiosity is not to prove a point with a child. Instead, compassionate curiosity is a means of having a conversation with a child in an attempt to better understand his challenges, his situation. Again, let me note that again. Compassionate curiosity. And think about that word. Compassion. Curiosity. Compassionate curiosity is a means of having a discussion, having a conversation, having dialogue with that child in hopes to better understand his problem, his situation, and the challenges that he's experiencing. Quote, part of the problem is people don't know the difference between accusing and accountability. So every time someone is held accountable, they feel accused. We should not accuse people, meaning we don't blame or point the finger at them. Accusations are rarely based on fact or truth, but allegations are claims that somebody has done wrong. Now, let's look back there in the middle of that sentence. It says this: every time someone is held accountable, they feel accused. For so many youth in the foster care system who have never had a sense of accountability in their life because there is no structure, there is no stability, there is no consistency. If you, as a foster parent, try to hold them accountable, well, they may feel that they've done something wrong. They might feel they're being accused by you of doing something wrong. So, this is some things you should not do when trying to hold a child accountable. When having a conversation with a child who is struggling, these are some things you should not do. Do not tell him to calm down. That child who is enraged, that child whose feelings and emotions are overwhelming him, and they flood out, and he is angry. Angry at the situation, angry at being placed in the foster care system, angry at being removed from his home, angry at these new rules he does not understand that he has to follow. Do not tell him to calm down. Do not remind him of your rules of the home. Remember, this is not his home in his mind. These are not his rules. Do not remind him that he can make better choices. Do not remind him of all the possible consequences in your home for making poor choices. Along with this, do not defend or explain your partner, your spouse, or other parents or adults' actions to him. Do not assure him that you want what's best for him. Remember, you are a stranger to him when he's first placed in the home. He does not know you. Why should you want what's best for him when the other adults in his life, in his mind, have betrayed him in some fashion? Do not suggest to him that there are other ways to deal with his anger. Do not tell him to count to 10. Do not tell him there's some breathing techniques. Do not tell him to go to his room until he's calmed down. Do not suggest other ways to deal with the situation. And do not tell him that two wrongs don't make a right. That child does not want to hear that. That child does not want to hear any of this. In fact, if you try one of these suggestions, It's very likely that you're going to escalate the problem, that you're going to cause him to become even more angry or more confused or fill him with even more anxiety. Sam Altman says this, quote, young people willing to push super hard to make something happen are among the most powerful forces in the world, end quote. That's a strong quote there from Sam Altman. So many children in the foster care system have never had anybody cheering them on, have never had anybody encouraging them to try harder. Now, why is accountability important? Well, let's look into that. When a child feels accused of doing something bad or negative by you, remember, he might feel, when you're holding him accountable, he might feel he's being accused of doing something wrong. When he feels accused of doing something bad by you, he might feel the following emotions. He might feel shock. He might withdraw. He might panic. He might become angry. He might lose all sense of confidence in himself. He might sink into depression. He might experience feelings of guilt. And of course, it can also cause long-lasting trauma in him as well. So, what is accountability versus accusations? Well, let's look at this quote here. Quote, accountability, on the other hand, is about responsibility and answerability, allowing us to examine our actions. In other words, accusations leave no room for exploration and growth, while accountability gives the opening for inspection, responsibility, and improvement of our actions. End quote. Now, when you're trying to help a child learn the importance of accountability, not only does he learn skills, it also helps him to gain independence, helps him to learn how to control not only what's happening in the moment, but take control over his future when he has future responsibilities for his actions and his choices. Along with that, accountability is very important because it helps that child build confidence. It helps him build self-esteem. Because you see, a child might take ownership of his mistakes as well as his successes when he becomes accountable. And this helps him to build an internal sense of control, an internal sense of competence, control and competence that he will need later on in his life. Accountability helps to reduce future conflict. Because when a child takes accountability, when he takes ownership and accountability, this helps to reduce the blame that he might experience or project towards others, siblings, caseworkers, social workers, his birth parents, foster parents. In addition, when he takes ownership and accountability, it also helps to reduce excuses and maybe even arguments. Because a child learns to accept the results of his actions, and it helps him to work to resolve any issues that he might be experiencing or challenged with. Accountability is also important because it helps to better prepare a child for adulthood. When we help children learn accountability today, it helps them to develop the skills today that he will need in the future. Not only in society, but for all facets of adulthood. Work, relationships, family, meetings in society, etc. Accountability or learning accountability can help to lead to better decision making as well. When a child in foster care learns that he's accountability for all of his actions and all of his choices, it helps him to better consider the possible consequence of making a choice before he enacts that choice. If a child understands that there's going to be a consequence to this choice, there's a consequence to the decision I make or do not make, well, this might help them to become more accountable before he makes those decisions, before he makes those choices. Along with this, accountability is important because it helps to strengthen relationships in a very, very positive way. When a child learns more responsibility, it helps to build respect, mutual respect, as well as trust. And we know that many children in the foster care system have issues of trust, or lack of trust, if you will, and struggle with building healthy attachments. Learning responsibility, learning accountability can help with that trust. Along with this, when staff show, or foster parents show, or caseworkers show they believe in the child, when you let the child know that you believe in him, many times he will try harder to meet your expectations. Dr. Nika White says this about accountability, quote, "In the case of calling someone in and holding them accountable, we want to respond, not react. We want to make it clear what was said or done was harmful, and here's why. Reacting with anger, shame, or resentment will likely increase the temperature in the room and encourage defensiveness in the receiving party, which is helpful for no one and won't improve a situation." End quote. Okay, we've looked at why accountability is important and what not to do, and the difference between accountability and accusations. How can we help? How can we help the child in your home? How can you help that child become more accountable? Because we know that accountability is very important for not only now, but for his future. To begin with, it's important for us to remember a child is coming from an environment where very likely there were no expectations, there was no consistency, there was no accountability, either for him or maybe even from his parents. His parents might not have had a sense of accountability either. So, when trying to teach the child accountability, begin small. Begin small. Start with small expectations and define them clearly. Let's look at that. Defining rules, defining expectations, defining consequences in your home. You have household expectations. You have household rules. When you have that child placed in your home, it's important that you begin small. Do not expect him to be accountable for everything suddenly. It takes time to build upon that, to build to that, if you will. So sit down, maybe after a few days have passed, and define clearly, very simply, very clearly, what your house rules are, what your expectations are, not just for him, but for everybody in the household. Also define very clearly, very simply, the consequences that are in place for poor choices he may have made, and poor actions. And remind him this is to keep him safe. You have household rules, you have household expectations, and you have consequences not only for him, but for everybody in the home, and these are designed to keep everybody safe. If need be, use charts, use pictures, use checklists as a reminder. You can have these charts, these pictures, these checklists for him to see perhaps on your refrigerator, perhaps in the lounge room, on a bulletin board, perhaps even in his bedroom. But use charts, pictures, checklists as reminders in places that he can see. Not only should you start small, you should also give him options, give him choices. For you see, when a child has a sense of choice, well, they have a sense of empowerment as well. They feel that they have the power to make a choice on their own. Because remember, a child in foster care often feels he has no control over anything. If you give him some choices, he has a sense of control. And this goes a long ways of building trust. So whenever possible, allow him to make choices. This might help him better see the consequences of his choices, of his actions. Most likely, he's going to learn accountability on his own when he sees that the choice he made led to a poor result, a negative result. So, again, when it is possible, allow him to make choices. Choices in schoolwork, choices in household chores and responsibilities, choices in whether he's going to tell the truth or not. And again, he will learn from the consequences of his choices, of his actions. And he will learn quickly that if he made a poor choice, there's going to be a consequence for that. Again, it's going to take time for him to develop that accountability, but he's going to learn along the way that this was a bad choice. Will he make the right choice next time? Very likely he might not. Again, he's coming from an environment, most likely, where there was no sense of accountability, consistency, stability, structure. So it may take time for him to learn the importance of accountability, but he will see that his choices led to a negative result. Along with choices, give him responsibilities, give him more and more responsibilities over time, when he shows that he can handle responsibilities. And help him understand why each responsibility that he is given is important. This should be ongoing dialogue, ongoing conversations, a day-to-day conversation with him. Daily, you're talking to him about the choices he made. Daily, you're talking to him about responsibilities. And you're letting him know that you're giving him more responsibilities in his life when he's able to show that he can handle those responsibilities. We all love to be praised. We all love to hear that we've done a good job. We all love to hear that we are appreciated. When a child is doing the right thing, making good choices, holding himself accountable, well, he needs to hear from you how good he's doing. He needs words of encouragement and praise from you every single day. Every day, he needs to hear words and praises from you. When he makes the right choice, when he does the right thing, when he holds himself personally accountable, he needs to hear, job well done. He needs to hear, I'm so proud of you. He needs to hear, wow, that was fantastic. I'm so excited for you. Thank you for doing that every day. In addition, when he is making the right choices, when he's doing the right thing and holding himself accountable, well, then consider giving him some extra privileges if it's possible. Perhaps staying up 30 minutes later in the weekend. Perhaps having some extra dessert. Perhaps more time watching TV or watching a movie. Perhaps going outside to play basketball for a little bit longer. Whatever it might be. Now, of course, it's important for you to be reasonable and fair. Do not expect too much of him at first. If he's coming from that environment that does not have structure, stability, responsibility, accountability, etc. So be reasonable with your expectations. Do not have expectations so high that he can't reach them, especially when he's first placed in your home. When he's first placed in your home, remember, he's scared, he's confused, he's filled with anxiety, he does not understand your rules. These are new rules for him. He may come from a home where there were no rules or expectations. So you need to be reasonable with your expectations upon him. Do not have high expectations that you know he cannot possibly reach. It takes time to build on that. In addition, do not overhelp him. Do not overhelp him. We hear a lot about helicopter parents. Do not overhelp him with chores. Do not overhelp him with responsibilities such as laundry, such as homework, such as household chores, etc. If you help him with that or overhelp him with that, then he's going to be taught the lesson that there's going to be somebody always over helping him when he does not want to do the laundry, when he does not want to do the homework, when he does not want to do those household chores. Indeed, it's okay for him to fail at something. Allow him to fail, yet continue to support and encourage him. So many of our success stories in our nation tell stories about how they failed at first. Walt Disney, Michael Jordan, Coach Tom Izzo from Michigan State. These people have successes in their life, but they also talk about how they learned from their failures. We all learn from our failures. Allow him to fail, yet continue to support him in encouragement, because failure can help us learn new strategies. It can help us become more resilient. And failure helps us to avoid doing the wrong thing over and over again. It helps us to avoid those repeated mistakes we may have made. It may be difficult watching him fail. At the same time, it is okay for him to fail at something as long as you keep saying to him, hey, get back in there and do the right thing. Get back there and try again. Get back up on that horse and try again. I'm cheering you on. I'm here to help you. One way we can teach a child the importance of accountability is holding ourselves accountable. Remember, he's watching you, he's listening to you, and he is learning from you. You might be the very first adult in his life who has talked about the importance of personal accountability. When you make a mistake, make sure you stay positive and hold yourself accountable instead of placing blame on someplace else, somewhere else, someone else. Again, when you make a mistake, he's watching you, he's listening to you, he's learning from you on how you handle it. When you make that mistake, he's watching to see what you do, what you say. He's learning from you. So stay positive. Hold yourself personally accountable. Say, you know what? I made a mistake. Here's what I did wrong. I'm going to do better next time. Don't blame someone else. Don't shift the blame. You're teaching them the wrong lesson. And when you do make a mistake, use those moments to explain the importance of accountability to the child. Again, he's learning from you. He's learning how you handled something. And he's learning how you held yourself accountable in a positive way. Now, it's important that he understands that he is ultimately responsible for his choices, for his decisions. Teach him not to blame others. Instead, show him how to react to the challenges, to the difficulties, to the adversities in his life, and bring the focus back to his choices, to his actions. Talk about how to correct his behavior or to avoid outcome in the future. Sit down and say, you know what, here's a choice you made. What could you have done differently? You chose not to do this. Here's what happened. How can you avoid this from happening in the future? You failed on your spelling quiz. You did not study at all. How can we make sure you get a better grade next time? What can you do to get a better grade? You did not clean up your room. Here was the consequence. No TV for a day, whatever it might be. What can you do next time differently? Remember, it's very likely that no one's having these conversations with him before. So when you have these conversations, do so in a compassionate, loving, calm, patient tone. If you already have consequences established in your household, you've discussed those conversations, and he understands those conversations, make sure you follow up those consequences. Make sure you follow up. Be consistent. Because if the consequences are ignored or avoided, perhaps one day you're just too tired to follow through on the consequences. You're just too exhausted from yet another discussion, another argument, whatever it might be. If you ignore those consequences, if you're not consistent with the consequences, then you're taking away accountability for his actions. You are taking away him being accountable because he sees that, well, sometimes I get in trouble, sometimes I don't. And he's no longer feeling accountable for his own actions. Another way you can teach him the importance of accountability is to teach him the importance of self reflection. Self reflection each day. Help him to practice reflecting or thinking about what went well today, what did not go well today. And you could do this maybe at each evening, maybe at the dinner table. You can talk about what the successes and failures of the day, what went well, what did not go well. Maybe you could do it right before bedtime. Maybe you could do it as you're tucking him into bed, whatever it might be. Reflection at the end of the day can also include how to make the next day a better one, how he can make the next day more successful, how he can hold himself more accountable next day and make better choices and decisions. And remind him this: he is in charge of each day. He is in charge of his own decision making. He is in charge of his own choices. He is in charge of holding himself personally accountable. And he's in charge of whether there's going to be consequences or not based upon the choices he makes, based upon the decisions that he makes. Now, when holding someone accountable, something you should not do is shaming him. You cannot shame a child into doing better. Instead, remind him that we all make mistakes. The mistakes happen for all of us. No one is perfect. He's going to make mistakes. Talk about the poor choice that he made. Not him as a person. He's not a bad person. He made a bad decision. He is not a failure. He just made a decision or a choice that led to failure. He is a good person that just happened to make the wrong choice this time. But mistakes happen, and he can do a better job tomorrow. He can do a better job next time. Again, this is part of the encouragement. Do not shame him. Remind him mistakes happen. Talk about the poor choice he made, and let him know how proud of him you are, and how you're cheering him on, and that he is loved. We live in a society today where there's a lot of self-blame and self-victimization. Indeed, self-victimization seems to be on the increase in our society among young people. Do not allow him to blame others or victimize himself. Do not allow him to be the victim, because it leads to other problems down the road, other concerns down the road. Instead, when he makes that poor choice, I'll encourage him to have a time of self-reflection, to think about the choice he made, think about the consequence, and think about what he could do better next time. And talk about personal accountability. Now, when you help him set goals, this also helps with accountability. Help him set goals for every single day. Maybe going the entire school day without yelling at somebody. Maybe going an entire hour without cursing at somebody. Maybe going the whole day by keeping his room clean. Maybe going the whole day without interrupting others. And then after the whole day, then a week, a month, etc. And set a timetable for each goal. Again, you can have it in a chart form. In fact, you can have an accountability chart that he can see each day. And he can pose his accountability and successes on that chart. Perhaps you could use little stickers with stars or hearts, or use a pen with a check mark or a smiley face, whatever it might be. But this is a great way to teach him accountability by having an accountability chart that he can see each day, and he can put up the stickers. He can write in the smiley face, the check mark, when he's been successful with holding himself accountable and making good choices. Now, to be sure, he not only needs encouragement and praise, he also needs to be reminded of this, and maybe even told for the first time in a long time, that he is loved. He's important, he's cared for, and he is loved. Yes, he may have made a mistake. Yes, he may have not held himself accountability. There may have been some mistakes or missteps here and there, but he's still loved. He's still important. He's still cared for. He's still a good child. He's a good boy. He's a good girl, and he is loved. Yes, you made a poor choice, but we still love you. Yes, you did not hold yourself accountable, but I know you're going to do a better job next time. He needs to hear these words from you every day. Every day. Quote, true accountability is about helping your child learn from their mistakes and get better, not worse. End quote. And that's what you're doing. You're helping him learn from his mistakes so he can get better in all aspects of his life. Again, in every single aspect of his life. This is a big responsibility for you as a foster parent. Yet it's one that you should embrace because you're helping him not only become more accountable, but more successful in life now and in the future. Now, for some words of encouragement and praise for you, check out the book, The Little Book of Foster Care Wisdom, 365 Days of Inspiration and Encouragement for today's foster parents. You can order this book and many other best-selling foster care books at the Foster Care Institute, and we'll send you a personally signed copy in the mail right away. For much more, check out our website, the Foster Care Institute, or simply go to drjohndegarmofostercare.com for so much more. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and email me at drjohndegarmo@gmail.com if you have any questions about this webinar or anything else that can be of help to you. My friend, thank you. Thank you for teaching children the importance of accountability and responsibility. Thank you for teaching them how to make good choices. Thank you for praising him and encouraging her when they're having difficult times. Thank you for letting them know how much they are loved. And thank you for all that you do to help children in crisis. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.